and my hands were still stained with oil paint when she tore the wrapping paper like it was junk mail. I had spent weeks crafting that canvas, every brushstroke a memory, every layer of color a quiet hope. It wasn't just a gift, it was my way back in. Her name is Emily, my granddaughter. I hadn't seen her in over 20 years, not really. We'd exchanged holiday cards a few times, maybe a photo here and there, but nothing that felt like connection. So when the invitation arrived, elegant, heavy stock paper embossed with gold, I held it in trembling hands. "Please join us for the rehearsal dinner of Emily Montgomery and Daniel Rhodes," it read. And just below, in a smaller font, as if added reluctantly, "Helen Montgomery, grandmother of the bride." I told myself it meant something, maybe a fresh start, maybe forgiveness, or maybe just a gesture. I was 73 years old, a widow, a woman mostly forgotten by the family she once held together. But I said yes. The rehearsal dinner was held at a grand estate in coastal Maine, white columns, rolling lawns, waitstaff in black vests moving like shadows. It was the kind of place you only see in movies or magazines. I arrived wearing the best dress I owned and clutching the large, carefully wrapped canvas I had poured my heart into. The painting was a family tree of sorts, portraits of my late husband Robert, my son Andrew, a young Emily, even myself, rendered in soft, timeless hues. I'd left space for future children, for the life she was about to build. My arthritis had flared the entire time I worked on it, but I kept going, because love is stubborn, and I thought maybe hers could be too. When it was time for gifts and toasts, I stood up slowly and said, "Emily, sweetheart, I brought something for your new home. I hope you'll find a place for it." She looked at me, her smile polite but tight. As she peeled away the paper, a hush fell over the room. The painting stood tall in her hands, glistening slightly, the oils still drying. I held my breath. "Oh, how traditional," she said, her voice flat and too loud. She laughed softly, then added, "Thank you, Grandma. We'll find somewhere special for it." Without meeting my eyes, she handed it off to a nearby server. "Could you please put this somewhere safe?" she said. And just like that, my heart's work vanished behind a swinging door. She turned to her maid of honor. "Now, about the centerpieces for tomorrow." I stood frozen for a moment before slipping back into the edges of the room. Andrew, my son, avoided my gaze. He was always good at that. I poured myself a glass of water and tried to swallow the lump forming in my throat. Later that night, wandering the halls in search of quiet, I passed a cracked door. Laughter spilled out like perfume. "As if I'd actually hang that thing," Emily giggled, her voice slurred with champagne. "It looks like something from a thrift store." "Was that hand-painted?" another voice asked. "Oh, definitely. Grandma's little fantasy. She probably thinks it makes up for being gone all my life." My hands trembled. The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The room went silent. 4 faces turned to me. Emily didn't flinch. Her look wasn't apologetic, it was challenging. I didn't say a word. I just walked away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. But in that moment, something in me woke up. I was done being erased. If you've ever been dismissed, ignored, or made to feel invisible, this story is for you. Don't forget to subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I didn't wait for sunrise. I packed my bag, slipped out of the guest room, and left the estate before anyone had the chance to notice or care. The roads were empty, the Maine coastline cloaked in early fog, but inside me something had ignited. The kind of fire that doesn't rage, it smolders, controlled, focused, and long overdue. I drove south past towns I hadn't seen in decades until I reached the place I once called home. It was smaller than I remembered, quieter, as if it had aged right alongside me. I parked in front of an old cafe where the hardware store used to be. The scent of fresh muffins and burnt espresso greeted me like an old friend. I ordered black coffee and pulled out my phone. There was only one person I could call. One person who knew the parts of my story that I hadn't told anyone in years. Marjorie still answered with the same gravelly voice she'd had when she worked for my in-laws. "Helen Montgomery," she said after a pause. "Well, I'll be." "I'm in town," I told her. "I need to talk." 20 minutes later, her little sedan pulled into the lot. She walked slower now, her frame smaller, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She slid into the booth across from me and gave me a once-over. "You look like hell," she said, without a trace of cruelty. "I feel worse." I told her everything, the wedding, the painting, the laughter behind closed doors. She didn't blink. They've always wanted you gone. That family of Roberts. They never forgave you for leaving with him. When he passed, they saw their chance and they took it. I stared at my coffee. I don't know what I expected. Maybe just not this. Marjorie leaned closer. Did you know Robert bought into Lakeside Estate before he died? My eyes snapped up. The venue? For the wedding? She nodded. Put down money. An 8% stake, I think. Said it was for you and Andrew. A safety net. But after he passed, your in-laws had all the paperwork. You were gone, so they said you'd handed it over. I didn't believe it. Still don't. No, I whispered. He never told me. They didn't want you to know. They funneled the payments through their accounts every quarter, like clockwork. And Andrew? Marjorie shrugged. He was a kid. Grew up hearing only their version of you. The blood drained from my face. Do you have proof? I don't, but I know someone who might. Mr. Dreyfus, Robert's lawyer. I think he's still practicing, or was last I heard. I didn't finish my coffee. I drove straight to the address she gave me, a brick building tucked between a florist and an antique shop. The office smelled like paper and leather-bound history. And when I walked in, Mr. Dreyfus looked up from his desk and said, Helen, my God. I sat down, my voice shaking but steady. I need to know what my husband did, and what was done in my name without my consent. He reached for a file cabinet and pulled out a folder. Robert bought 8% of Lakeside Estate 3 months before his diagnosis. It was meant to be your retirement, something solid, something lasting. But after he passed, your in-laws came in with a power of attorney, claimed you'd moved overseas and handed over management of your affairs. I didn't. I know, he said gently. The signature was forged. I suspected, but by the time I had cause to act, they'd rerouted the payments. I tried to reach you, sent letters, made calls, but they all came back unopened or returned. My voice barely rose above a whisper. So for over 40 years, they took everything? He slid the folder toward me. And now it's all coming due. The estate is restructuring. Every stakeholder has to sign the new contract or sell. But you, Helen, still legally hold that stake. And it's significant, especially now. I flipped through the documents. And there, at the bottom of one page, was the name Wedding Reservation, Emily Montgomery, booked through H. Montgomery Trust. They used my name, I said slowly, to host the wedding that I wasn't even wanted at. Mr. Dreyfus nodded. They had no idea you'd find out, but now that you have, I exhaled. Not with rage, not with grief, but with clarity. They mocked the gift I made with love, I said, my voice like steel, in the very house my husband bought for our future. Mr. Dreyfus met my eyes. You have options, legal options. I know, I replied, but I don't want a courtroom. Not yet. I want control, quiet control. He hesitated, then handed me a business card. The venue manager. You'll want to start there. That night, in the small inn just outside town, I made a single phone call. Hi, this is Helen Montgomery. I'm one of the owners of Lakeside Estate. I'd like to make a few changes to this weekend's schedule. Nothing disruptive, just personal. And just like that, the woman they tried to erase had stepped quietly, fully back into the frame. By the time I returned to the estate, the final floral arrangements were being tied to the arbor. Ivory chairs lined the lawn in perfect symmetry, and somewhere inside, champagne glasses were already clinking. But I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like the forgotten grandmother hovering in the corner of a life that had moved on without me. I walked with quiet purpose past guests in silk and sequins, my heels clicking on the stone terrace. When the usher asked if I'd like to be escorted to the front row, the seat they'd so generously saved for me, I politely declined. No thank you, I said, voice calm. I know where I'm going. And I did. 3rd row, aisle seat, close enough to see the tiers, but far enough to not be noticed. I sat down beside a venue staff member I recognized from my call the night before. She nodded subtly. No words exchanged, just understanding. The ceremony began. Emily walked down the aisle alone, radiant in lace and youth and unbothered assurance. She caught my eye for the briefest moment, her expression unreadable. The vows were short, elegant. The couple kissed, applause. And then, the ballroom. The reception hall sparkled with white roses and candlelight. But above the main table, where Emily and Daniel sat in curated perfection, something unexpected had appeared. My painting, hung proudly on an easel, spotlighted in soft lighting, right there, center of the room, My oil-painted olive branch, once mocked and discarded, now impossible to ignore. The buzz around the room was immediate. Whispers, curious glances. Emily's smile faltered. Andrew stared at the canvas as if seeing it for the first time. Then came Caroline, Emily's mother, Andrew's wife, the family's unofficial gatekeeper. She appeared beside me like a storm. "What is that doing here?" she hissed, her voice sugar-laced for the passing guests. I set down my wine. "Let's talk, privately." She led me to a side hallway. Andrew followed, brow furrowed but silent. Behind closed doors, I exhaled. "I know," I said, "about the shares, about the forgery, about the diverted payments." Andrew blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Lakeside Estate," I said slowly. "Robert bought in before he died, 8%. It was supposed to be for us, for our future. Your grandparents took it, claimed I vanished, and the two of you kept up the charade." Caroline crossed her arms. "You don't have proof." "I have everything," I replied evenly. "The documents, the paper trail, and now the legal standing. I could take this to court." Andrew looked away. "But I won't." That surprised them. "I'm not here to punish," I continued. "I'm here to reclaim what was mine and redirect what was misused." Caroline narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" "I'm placing my shares into a trust for Emily and her children if she has any. The diverted funds, which amount to approximately $1.1 million, will be used to start an art scholarship, in Robert's name, for kids who'd never afford it otherwise." Andrew stared at me. "That's generous." I met his gaze, steady. "It's just, and it's overdue." Caroline's voice dropped. "There must be a condition." "There is. A family meeting. All of us. I want to tell my story, the truth, with witnesses if needed, and I want to be heard." Andrew swallowed hard. "Is that all?" "You spent decades rewriting me out of our story," I said softly. "All I ask is 15 minutes to write myself back in." None of them answered, but no one said no. And when I returned to the ballroom, the lights shining softly on the painting I once hid away, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole, and for the first time in decades, present. The meeting was held a week after the wedding in a quiet room at the local library. Not a courtroom, not a parlor full of pretenses, just 4 chairs in a circle and the weight of years between them. I sat with my hands folded in my lap. Across from me, Andrew, my son, Emily, the granddaughter I barely knew, Caroline, who looked 10 years older than she had at the reception. Marjorie was beside me, not just as support, but as witness. I began where it hurt most. When Robert got sick, we didn't have the kind of insurance needed to cover his treatment. I was offered a job in Chicago, full benefits, enough to help him, but I had to go quickly. Your grandparents promised they'd keep Andrew until we got settled. I looked at my son. They told you I left for good, that I didn't care, but I wrote to you. I called every Sunday. Marjorie reached into a worn envelope and placed a stack of saved letters and returned gifts on the table. "They intercepted everything," she said. "I saw them do it. I saved what I could." Andrew's hands trembled as he picked up one of the cards, his 8th birthday, a little train sticker still stuck to the corner. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know any of this." Emily's voice broke the silence. "Why didn't you fight harder?" I met her eyes. "I fought in every way I knew how, but no one was listening. So now I ask you to listen." They did. Not perfectly, not without tension, but they listened. The months that followed weren't magic. They were slow, awkward, real. Andrew started therapy. Emily changed her graduate focus to art history. Caroline stepped back from controlling everything. And the scholarship launched, Robert's name in bold at the top, surrounded by sketches and paintings from the first group of students we helped. The painting, my painting, remained on display at the estate, not as decoration, but as a reminder. This story isn't about revenge. It's about remembering who you are even when others forget you. It's about reclaiming your place, your voice, and your worth. If this story moved something in you, you're not alone. We see you. We hear you. Thank you for watching Real Her Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs it today.